The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never seen such fear. 12 different alien species sat around the massive circular table, their usual calm replaced by panic. The air itself seemed to shake with worry as holographic images showed the destruction spreading across the galaxy. Ambassador Zethkar stood in the center of the room. Her crystal-like body, normally a beautiful blue color, now looked gray with stress. The tall, thin alien from the Viridian Republic had traveled 3 star systems to bring the terrible news to the Council. "Honored members," she began, her voice echoing through the chamber. "The Krexthul have taken another system. The Altair colonies are gone. 3 billion souls all consumed." The images floating above the table showed what remained of the Altair system. Where once there had been green planets full of life, now only dead rocks floated in space. The Krexthul had eaten everything. Every plant, every animal, every thinking being. They had even stripped the minerals from the planets themselves. Elder Morden, the oldest member of the council, spoke in his deep, rumbling voice. His people, the Ethereals, had lived for thousands of years and seen many wars. But nothing like this. How many ships did they lose in the attack? "None," Zethkar replied, and the room fell silent. "They adapted to every weapon we used. Every time our ships fired, their biovessels learned how to defend against it. By the end of the battle, our weapons could not even scratch their hulls. The Krexthul were unlike any enemy the galaxy had ever faced. They were not a normal species that built ships and tools. Instead, they grew their technology from their own bodies. Their ships were alive, able to heal damage and change shape during battle. When they conquered a planet, they did not just take it over. They consumed everything on it and used that energy to grow stronger." Council member Vextal, a small green-skinned being with large eyes, pulled up more data on his screen. "Our combined fleets engaged them at the Kepler defense line 3 days ago. We lost 60% of our ships. The survivors report that the Krexthul vessels actually grew larger during the fight, feeding on the wreckage." "What about the defense satellites around the core worlds?" asked another member. "They will not be enough," Zethkar said, her crystal body dimming further. "The Krexthul learn from every battle. Each engagement makes them stronger. Our best military minds have run the calculations. At their current rate of growth, they will reach the homeworlds within 6 months." The chamber erupted in worried voices. Some aliens called for evacuation plans. Others suggested finding new galaxies to flee to. A few spoke of surrender, though everyone knew the Krexthul did not take prisoners. "They only consumed." Elder Morden raised one of his forearms, and the room became quiet again. "We have tried every conventional approach. Our fleets cannot match them in battle. Our technology cannot keep up with their adaptation rate. Diplomacy is impossible with beings that see all other life as food." "Then what do you suggest?" Vextal asked. The old ethereal was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his words sent a chill through the entire assembly. "There is one military force we have not approached. One species that might have the capability to face this threat." Every being in the room knew who he meant, though none wanted to say the name out loud. "The humans," whispered council member Thyra, a tall, pale alien with silver eyes. "You cannot be serious." Humanity was the newest species to join the galactic community, and they had a reputation that made most aliens uncomfortable. While other civilizations had moved beyond warfare through diplomacy and advanced technology, humans still fought wars. Real wars, brutal total wars where entire planets could be destroyed. "They are barbarians," Vextal protested. "Their methods are uncivilized." "Uncivilized, yes," Elder Morden agreed, "but effective. In the 50 years since they joined the galaxy, no enemy has ever defeated them in a war they truly committed to winning." The humans had a concept that terrified most galactic species: total war. When most civilizations fought, they followed rules. They protected civilian populations. They preserved important cultural sites. They tried to minimize damage to planets and star systems. Humans did none of these things when they decided an enemy needed to be completely destroyed. "Remember the Vorthon incident," Morden continued. "When the Vorthon Empire attacked the human colony of New Texas, humanity did not just fight back. They hunted down every Vorthon ship, every Vorthon base, every Vorthon settlement. They did not stop until the Vorthon Empire ceased to exist." "That was different," Thyra argued. "The Vorthons were raiders, not an extinction-level threat. And yet," Morden pointed out, "they are extinct." Zethkar looked around the room at the assembled representatives. These were the leaders of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Their peoples had built wonders that spanned star systems. They had solved problems of poverty, disease, and want, but none of them knew how to fight a war of extinction. "What exactly are you proposing?" she asked. "We send a formal request to Earth," Morden said. "We ask for their military assistance in dealing with the Krexthul threat." The room exploded into argument. Half the council members thought it was too dangerous to involve the humans. The other half worried it would not be enough. "They will want something in return," Vextal pointed out. "Humans do not fight wars for free." "What could they possibly want that we have not already offered them?" asked another member. The truth was that humanity had been kept at arm's length by most galactic civilizations. They were allowed to trade and join some organizations, but they were banned from military alliances and restricted from certain sectors of space. Most aliens viewed them as too violent and unpredictable to trust with real power. "Perhaps," said Thyra slowly, "that is exactly what they want. Full acceptance, full membership in all galactic institutions. Even the military command structure?" Vextal asked in horror. "Even that," Morden confirmed. "If we are asking them to fight an extinction war, we must be prepared to treat them as equals." The debate continued for hours. Some members argued that involving humans would be like solving one problem by creating another. Others pointed out that there would be no galaxy left to worry about if the Krexthul were not stopped. Finally, Zethkar called for silence. "I have seen what the Krexthul do to worlds they conquer. I have watched the recordings from Altair Prime as the bioships descended. Every man, woman, and child on that planet was consumed alive. 3 billion people screaming as they were dissolved and absorbed." She paused, letting the image sink in. "If there is any chance that humanity can stop this horror, we must take it, whatever the cost." The vote was close, but it passed. The Galactic Council would formally request military assistance from Earth. As the session ended and the various ambassadors prepared to return to their ships, Elder Morden approached Zethkar privately. "You realize what we are about to unleash?" he asked quietly. The crystal being looked at him with eyes that had seen too much death. "Perhaps," she replied, "but I would rather live in a galaxy ruled by human barbarians than die in one consumed by the Krexthul." The message was sent that night. For the first time in galactic history, the advanced civilizations of the cosmos were begging the humans for help. They had no idea what they had just asked for. Admiral Sarah Chen sat in the war room of the UES Retribution, humanity's newest and most powerful battleship. The massive vessel hung in space near Earth's moon, its dark hull bristling with weapons that most alien species had never even imagined. Around the conference table sat the top military minds of the human race, all studying the message that had arrived from the Galactic Council just 6 hours ago. The holographic display showed the formal request for military assistance. The language was polite, almost apologetic, but the desperation behind it was clear. The same alien civilizations that had spent decades calling humans primitive warmongers were now begging for help. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Admiral Chen said, her voice calm but with an edge that made her subordinates pay attention. "These are the same aliens who banned us from the neutral zone because our ships carried too many weapons. The same ones who refused to sell us their advanced shield technology because we might use it for aggressive purposes. And now they want us to save them from extinction." General Marcus Rodriguez, the head of the Solar Marine Corps, leaned back in his chair. He was a big man with scars on his face from the Titan Rebellion, and he had never liked dealing with aliens. "The Krexthul must be really bad if they're coming to us. I've read the intelligence reports. These things make the Vorthans look like peaceful traders." Dr. Elena Vasquez, the chief xenobiologist, brought up more data on her tablet. She had spent years studying alien species, and what she had learned about the Krexthul worried her more than anything else in her career. "Admiral, I've analyzed all the information the Council provided. The Krexthul are not just another hostile species. They are a galactic-level extinction event. If they succeed in their expansion, every intelligent species in this galaxy will be dead within a century." The room fell quiet as everyone absorbed that statement. Admiral Chen had fought in a dozen conflicts during her 30-year career, but none of them had involved the potential end of all life in the galaxy. "What makes them so dangerous?" asked Colonel James Park, the head of Special Operations. Dr. Vasquez activated the holographic display, showing images of Krexthul bioships. The vessels looked more like enormous insects than spacecraft, with organic hulls that pulsed like living tissue. They are a perfect predator species. They consume other life forms and integrate their biological and technological advantages into themselves. Every battle makes them stronger. Every planet they conquer gives them more resources and knowledge. So they adapt, General Rodriguez said. We've faced adaptive enemies before. Not like this, Dr. Vasquez replied. Most adaptive species learn over generations. The Krexthul adapt in real time, sometimes during the middle of a battle. A weapon that works against them in the first minute of combat might be completely useless by the 5th minute. Admiral Chen studied the tactical data. The Galactic Council had provided detailed records of their battles with the Krexthul, and the pattern was always the same. Initial success followed by rapid adaptation, followed by total defeat. The aliens had lost every engagement, and each loss had made their enemies stronger. What about their numbers? Colonel Park asked. Unknown but growing, Dr. Vasquez answered. Every world they consume adds to their biomass. Current estimates suggest they have at least 10,000 bioships of various sizes, with the largest being over 50 kilometers long. General Rodriguez whistled low. That's bigger than our super dreadnoughts. Much bigger, the doctor confirmed. And unlike our ships, theirs can repair themselves, grow new weapons during battle, and even split into smaller vessels if needed. Admiral Chen looked around the table at her officers. These were people who had never backed down from a fight, who had won battles against impossible odds. But the scope of what they were being asked to do was unprecedented. Let's talk about what the Council is offering in return, she said, bringing up another document. Full membership in all galactic institutions, access to all restricted technologies, representation on the High Command, and formal recognition of humanity as a Tier 1 civilization. The benefits were enormous. For 50 years, humanity had been treated as second-class citizens in galactic society. They were allowed to trade and participate in some cultural exchanges, but they were excluded from the real centers of power. The offer on the table would change all of that. There's got to be a catch, Colonel Park said suspiciously. The catch is obvious, General Rodriguez replied. They want us to fight their war for them. They've already lost most of their combined fleets. If we say yes, we're not providing support. We're becoming the primary military force. Dr. Vasquez pulled up casualty reports from the alien battles. The numbers were staggering. The Council forces have lost over 60% of their ships in just 3 engagements. Their survivors report that traditional tactics are completely ineffective. What makes them think we'll do better? Colonel Park asked. Admiral Chen smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. Because we don't use traditional tactics. She activated another display showing human military doctrine. While most galactic civilizations fought according to established rules and conventions, humanity had developed a very different approach to warfare. They called it total war, and it was something that terrified most alien species. When other species fight, they try to minimize casualties and preserve infrastructure, Admiral Chen explained. They follow rules of engagement that protect civilian populations and cultural sites. They fight wars to gain territory or resources or political advantage. And we don't, General Rodriguez added with satisfaction. We fight wars to completely destroy our enemies, Admiral Chen continued. When humanity decides that something needs to be eliminated, we don't stop until it no longer exists. We don't take prisoners if taking prisoners interferes with winning. We don't preserve infrastructure if destroying it helps us win. We don't follow rules if following rules prevents us from achieving total victory. The officers around the table nodded. This was the human way of war, developed over thousands of years of conflict on Earth and refined during humanity's expansion into space. It was brutal, efficient, and absolutely ruthless. So the question, Admiral Chen said, is whether the Krexthul can adapt to that. Dr. Vasquez considered the problem. Most of their adaptation comes from studying their enemies during battle. But if our tactics are unlike anything they've encountered, they might not be able to adapt fast enough, Colonel Park finished. General Rodriguez leaned forward. Admiral, I recommend we accept the Council's request. But if we're going to do this, we do it our way. No restrictions, no rules of engagement, no concerns about collateral damage. Total war against an extinction-level threat. Admiral Chen looked around the table one more time. The decision she was about to make would affect not just humanity, but every living being in the galaxy. If they succeeded, They would save trillions of lives and gain humanity a position of power in galactic society. If they failed, the Krexthul would consume Earth along with everything else. Very well, she said finally. We accept the Council's request. Colonel Park, I want a full mobilization of all human military assets. Every ship, every marine, every weapon system we have. General Rodriguez, start preparing the fleet for extended operations in hostile territory. Dr. Vasquez, I need complete tactical analyses of Krexthul biology and technology. She paused, then added, and someone send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them that humanity accepts their request for military assistance, but make sure they understand exactly what they've asked for. The message sent to the Council was simple and direct. The human race accepts your request for assistance against the Krexthul threat. Prepare for total war. Within hours, the mobilization began. All across human space, ships began moving toward rally points. Marine battalions loaded onto transports. Weapons factories shifted to full wartime production. Humanity was going to war and they intended to win. The aliens had asked for help. They were about to learn what human help looked like. As Admiral Chen watched the first wave of ships depart Earth orbit, she spoke quietly to herself. God help us all. The mobilization of human military forces was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Within 72 hours of accepting the Galactic Council's request, ships began emerging from hidden bases throughout human space. What the aliens had thought was humanity's entire fleet turned out to be just the visible portion of Earth's military might. Ambassador, Zethkar stood on the observation deck of the Council monitoring station at the edge of human territory, watching in stunned silence as the true scope of human military power revealed itself. Ship after ship appeared from concealed asteroid bases, hidden moon facilities, and camouflaged orbital platforms. The humans had been preparing for a major war for decades. How many ships do they have? Whispered Council Member Vextal, his large eyes wide with shock. The answer came from Captain Yena Zosk, a military analyst from the Rigel Defense Force. She had been studying human military capabilities for years, but even she was amazed by what they were seeing. Current count is over 2,000 combat vessels, with more appearing every hour. And these are not just fighters or small patrol ships. Many of these are larger than our heaviest battleships. The centerpiece of the human fleet was a vessel that defied description. The UES Warhammer was over 3 kilometers long and bristled with weapons that most alien species did not even recognize. Its captain, Rex Morrison, had a reputation that made even veteran Council military officers nervous. The humans called him Devastator, and he had never lost a battle, but the ships were only part of what shocked the alien observers. Along with the warships came massive industrial platforms, mobile shipyards, and something that made the Council members very uncomfortable: planet cracker siege engines. These were weapons designed not to capture worlds but to completely destroy them. They brought world killers, Vextal said in horror. What kind of military force brings weapons that can destroy entire planets? Captain Zosk checked her instruments again. According to our scans, they have 12 of them. Each one is capable of cracking a planet's crust or boiling away its atmosphere. The human approach to warfare was becoming clear, and it terrified the aliens who had asked for their help. Most galactic civilizations fought to gain territory or resources. Humans fought to eliminate threats completely. If they decided a world was a problem, they could make it cease to exist. Admiral Chen's flagship, the Retribution, moved to the head of the formation. The massive dreadnought was painted in the dark colors of the human war fleet, and its hull was covered with the symbols of every battle the human navy had ever won. It was a ship built for one purpose: total destruction of anything that stood against it. Captain Morrison opened a communication channel to address his crew aboard the Warhammer. His voice was calm, but there was an undertone of eagerness that made the alien observers nervous. Attention all hands. We are about to engage an enemy that has consumed entire star systems. They think they are apex predators. They are about to learn that humans wrote the book on extinction. The human fleet began moving toward the Kepler 442 system, where the Krexthul had established a major staging area. Intelligence reports indicated that the bioships were using the system's planets as feeding grounds, consuming everything they could find to fuel their expansion. The journey took 3 days, and during that time, the alien observers got their first real look at how humans prepared for war. Unlike other species, who spent time planning defensive strategies and evacuation routes. The humans focused entirely on destruction. They studied their enemy not to find ways to coexist or negotiate, but to find the most efficient methods of extermination. Dr. Elena Vasquez worked around the clock, analyzing Krexthul biology and looking for weaknesses. Her team had discovered something interesting. The bioships required constant feeding to maintain their adaptive capabilities. If they could be cut off from resources, their ability to change and grow would be severely limited. Target their food supply, she reported to Admiral Chen. Starve them, and they become much more vulnerable. General Rodriguez added his own tactical assessment. The Krexthul adapt to conventional weapons and tactics. But they've never faced human-style total warfare. They won't know how to respond to our approach. As they approached the Kepler system, the scope of the Krexthul presence became clear. Bioships of various sizes floated throughout the system, feeding on the stripped remains of what had once been thriving worlds. The largest vessels were truly massive, looking more like living asteroids than spacecraft. The first contact occurred at the edge of the system. A patrol of Krexthul scout ships, each about the size of a human destroyer, moved to intercept the approaching fleet. The aliens expected another conventional engagement like those they had fought with Council forces. What they got instead was their first introduction to human warfare. Captain Liu commanded the UES Tsunami, a heavy cruiser in the vanguard of the human fleet. When 3 Krexthul bioships moved to board her vessel, she made a decision that shocked both the aliens and the Krexthul. She activated the ship's self-destruct sequence. The nuclear explosion lit up the void of space like a new star. The Tsunami was completely destroyed, along with all hands aboard, but the blast also eliminated all 3 Krexthul vessels and damaged 2 others that had been nearby. Acceptable losses, Admiral Chen noted calmly as she watched the tactical display. The destruction of 1 human ship to eliminate 3 enemy vessels was considered a good trade by human military standards. Council member Vextal stared at the display in horror. She killed her own crew, her own ship. How can they consider that acceptable? Captain Zosk tried to explain human military thinking to her civilian colleagues. They don't fight to preserve their forces. They fight to eliminate the enemy. If sacrificing 1 ship helps achieve that goal, they consider it a victory. Admiral Chen opened a fleet-wide communication channel. All ships execute Protocol 7. The aliens had no idea what Protocol 7 meant, but they were about to find out. It was the human military designation for unrestricted warfare. No rules of engagement. No concern for preserving enemy infrastructure. No attempts at negotiation or mercy. Complete destruction of the target by any means necessary. The Krexthul bioships began to move, preparing to engage the human fleet in the same way they had fought the Council forces. They expected to adapt to human weapons and tactics during the battle, gradually gaining the advantage through their superior ability to change and grow. They were about to discover that humans had spent their entire history perfecting the art of extinction-level warfare. Where other species saw war as a means to an end, humans saw it as an end in itself, the complete and total elimination of anything that threatened their survival. Captain Morrison's voice echoed across the fleet channels. Remember, people, these things eat entire civilizations for breakfast. Our job is to make sure they don't get the chance to eat anymore. Show them what happens when they threaten humanity. The human ships spread out into attack formation, their weapons powering up. But unlike the conventional battle lines used by other galactic forces, the humans arranged themselves in patterns designed for maximum destruction rather than maximum protection. They were not planning to fight a battle. They were planning to conduct an extermination. The Krexthul were about to learn the difference between facing a military force and facing a species that viewed warfare as an art form of complete annihilation. As the 2 fleets closed distance, Admiral Chen spoke quietly to her bridge crew. Today we teach the galaxy why they were afraid of us in the first place. The battle for Kepler 442 was about to begin, and it would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The siege of Kepler 442b became a lesson in human military doctrine that the galaxy would never forget. While the Krexthul expected orbital bombardment or a ground invasion like previous battles, humanity did something that no other species had ever attempted. They began the systematic extermination of everything the enemy could possibly use. Colonel Sarah Kim stood on the bridge of the UES Scorpion, watching as atmospheric processors descended toward the planet's surface. The massive machines were not designed to make the world more habitable. Instead, they were engineered to strip away everything that could sustain life. "Begin Phase 1, she ordered, and the processors activated. The planet below had once been a beautiful world covered with forests and oceans. The Krexthul had been using it as a feeding ground, consuming the native life forms to fuel their bioships. But the humans were not interested in fighting for the planet. They were interested in making sure the Krexthul could not use it. The Krexthul adapt by consuming and integrating, Colonel Kim explained to the alien observers who were monitoring the battle. So we remove everything they can possibly consume. The atmospheric processors began releasing specially designed chemicals into the planet's air and water. These were not simple poisons that could be adapted to. They were complex bioweapons that targeted the fundamental processes the Krexthul used to absorb energy from organic matter. Within hours, every plant on the planet began to wither and die. Ambassador Zethkar watched in horror from the Council observation ship. This level of destruction, surely there must be a more civilized approach. Admiral Chen's response came through the communication channel, her voice completely without emotion. "You asked for our help, not our methods. This is how humans fight extinction wars." The Krexthul bioships in orbit began to respond, sending landing craft to the planet's surface. They had expected to fight human ground forces in conventional battles. Instead, they found a world where nothing could survive. The very air had become toxic to their biology. But the humans were just getting started. General Rodriguez had deployed teams across the system with a single mission: eliminate every possible resource the Krexthul could use. Asteroid mining stations were destroyed with nuclear charges. Ice comets were vaporized with focused energy beams. Even the space dust between planets was being cleared with massive electromagnetic sweeps. Scorched Earth tactics on a stellar scale, General Rodriguez explained to his staff. If they can't feed, they can't adapt. The Krexthul attempted to respond in the only way they knew how, by adapting their bioships to the new conditions. But human warfare was unlike anything in their evolutionary experience. Where other species fought for territory or resources, humans fought for the complete elimination of threats. The turning point came when the humans deployed their psychological warfare protocols. Dr. Vasquez had discovered that the Krexthul communicated through bioelectric signals that could be intercepted and analyzed. The humans began broadcasting modified versions of these signals back at the bioships. "What are they sending?" asked Captain Zusk, who was monitoring the transmissions. Dr. Vasquez checked her instruments. Pain signals, fear responses, death screams from consumed species were turning their own communication system into a weapon. The effect on the Krexthul was immediate and devastating. Their hive mind communication network, which had been their greatest strength, became a conduit for psychological torture. Every bioship in the system began receiving constant broadcasts of terror and agony. Some of the smaller vessels actually began to flee, abandoning their positions for the first time in Krexthul history. Others simply stopped moving, their crews apparently paralyzed by the constant stream of horror being pumped into their minds. But Admiral Chen was not satisfied with psychological warfare alone. She had brought weapons systems that most galactic civilizations had banned from warfare centuries ago, weapons designed not just to kill but to inflict maximum terror and suffering. "Deploy the Medusa Protocol," she ordered. General Rodriguez smiled grimly as he activated the special weapons systems. The Medusa Protocol was something humans had developed specifically for enemies that could adapt to conventional attacks. Instead of trying to kill the Krexthul directly, it was designed to trap them in a state worse than death. Specialized missiles launched from human ships, each one carrying a bioweapon that had taken years to develop. When they impacted the Krexthul bioships, the weapons released a virus that did not kill its targets. Instead, it attacked their nervous systems, causing complete paralysis while leaving them fully conscious and aware. The effect was horrifying to watch. Massive bioships that had been moving and fighting suddenly became motionless, floating dead in space. But they were not actually dead. Their crews were still alive inside, trapped in their own bodies, unable to move or speak or even close their eyes. They could only watch and wait and suffer. Permanent paralysis with full consciousness, Dr. Vasquez explained to the shocked alien observers. They can see and hear and feel everything, but they cannot move or respond in any way. They will remain like that until they die of old age. Entire bioships became floating tombs, their crews aware but unable to act. The psychological effect on the remaining Krexthul was devastating. For a species that had never known defeat, the sight of their paralyzed comrades was more terrifying than any weapon they had ever faced. Ambassador Zethkar tried to contact Admiral Chen directly. "This is beyond anything we imagined. Is such cruelty necessary?" Admiral Chen's response was cold and clinical. "The Krexthul have consumed billions of sentient beings. They eat their enemies alive, dissolving them slowly while they scream. You asked us to stop them. This is what stopping them looks like." The remaining Krexthul forces attempted to regroup around their largest bioship, a massive vessel over 30 kilometers long that served as their command center. But the humans had been studying this ship since the battle began, and they had prepared something special for it. Captain Morrison aboard the Warhammer launched a new type of weapon, nanomachines designed specifically to attack organic materials. These microscopic robots were programmed to disassemble the bioship's hull at the molecular level, literally eating it from the outside in. The effect was visible to the naked eye. The massive Krexthul vessel began to dissolve, its organic armor simply disappearing as the nanomachines consumed it. The ship's crew tried desperately to adapt, growing new hull materials and defensive systems. But the nanomachines adapted faster, constantly changing their programming to overcome any biological defenses. "How is this possible?" asked Council Member Vextal, staring at the dissolving bioship. "Nothing can adapt that quickly." Dr. Vasquez explained the technology. The nanomachines are controlled by artificial intelligence systems that can reprogram them millions of times per second. They adapt faster than any biological system ever could. Within an hour, the massive command ship was nothing but floating debris. Its crew had been consumed by the same type of technology they had used against countless other species, but refined and perfected by human military science. The remaining Krexthul bioships began to retreat for the first time in their species' history. They had never encountered an enemy that fought with such complete ruthlessness, such total commitment to destruction. Other species fought to win. Humans fought to exterminate. Admiral Chen watched as the enemy fleet fled the system. Pursuit course. All ships. No survivors. The alien observers were shocked. They are retreating. The battle is won. Why continue? General Rodriguez answered from his command ship. Because retreating enemies can regroup and attack again. Human military doctrine is clear. When you fight an extinction war, you fight it to extinction. The human fleet gave chase, hunting down the fleeing bioships with the methodical efficiency of born predators. Every Krexthul vessel that tried to escape was tracked down and destroyed. The humans used weapons that violated every treaty on civilized warfare, but they were not fighting a civilized enemy. By the end of the battle, not a single Krexthul ship remained in the Kepler system. The planet below was a dead world, its atmosphere poisoned beyond recovery. The space around it was filled with the wreckage of bioships and the paralyzed hulks of vessels caught by the Medusa Protocol. Ambassador Zethkar stared at the devastation in stunned silence. The humans had won a complete victory, but the methods they had used were beyond anything the galactic civilizations had ever imagined. "Is this how humans always fight?" she asked quietly. Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication channel one last time. "Only when we fight to win." The final battle took place in the dead system of Xerion Prime, where the last Krexthul Queen ship had made its desperate stand. The massive biovessel was larger than anything the galaxy had ever seen, a living world unto itself that stretched over 100 kilometers from end to end. It pulsed with organic lights and spawned smaller bioships from its surface like some enormous, cosmic parasite. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Retribution, studying the tactical displays that showed the Queen ship's defenses. This was the heart of the Krexthul Empire, the source from which all their bioships had originally grown. Inside this vessel was the collective intelligence of their entire species, along with the genetic material they had stolen from every civilization they had consumed. Analysis. Dr. Vasquez, Admiral Chen requested. The xenobiologist pulled up her readings on the massive vessel. The Queen ship contains the equivalent of several billion individual Krexthal minds, all networked together. It's not just their command center. It's their entire species condensed into a single organism. If we destroy this, we destroy them all. General Rodriguez studied the ship's defensive capabilities. Smaller biovessels swarmed around it like antibodies protecting a vital organ. The Queen ship itself bristled with organic weapons that could fire spores capable of consuming entire fleets. Its hide was thick enough to withstand direct hits from nuclear weapons. "Conventional attack won't work," he reported. "That thing is too well defended and it can spawn new defenders faster than we can destroy them." Admiral Chen nodded calmly. She had expected this. The final battle against an extinction-level threat was never going to be easy. But humanity had not come this far by using conventional methods. "Deploy the Worldbreaker arsenal," she ordered. The bridge crew paused for a moment. The Worldbreaker arsenal was humanity's most closely guarded secret. Weapons so destructive that their very existence was classified at the highest levels. They had been built for one purpose: to completely destroy threats that could not be eliminated by any other means. Captain Morrison's voice came through the communication channel from the Warhammer. "Admiral, are you certain? Once we use those weapons, there's no going back." "I'm certain," Admiral Chen replied. "The Krexthal have had their chance to retreat. They chose to make their last stand. Now they learn what happens when you threaten the existence of every living thing in the galaxy." The human fleet spread out in a wide formation around the Queen ship. From deep within their hulls, weapon systems that had never been used in combat began to power up. These were not normal ship-to-ship weapons. They were devices that could alter the fundamental forces of reality itself. The first weapon to fire was the antimatter cascade torpedo, launched from the UES Devastator. Unlike normal antimatter weapons that simply exploded, this device was designed to create a chain reaction that would continue until it consumed everything in its path. When it struck the Queen ship's hull, it began to literally erase matter from existence. The massive biovessel shuddered as sections of its body simply vanished into nothingness. But it was too large to be destroyed by a single weapon, no matter how powerful. The Queen ship began to regenerate, growing new tissue to replace what had been lost. "Target is adapting to antimatter attack," reported the weapons officer. "Regeneration rate is increasing." Admiral Chen smiled coldly. "Then we use something it can't adapt to. Fire the gravity bombs." The second wave of weapons was even more terrifying. Gravity bombs were devices that created temporary black holes, warping space-time itself around their targets. When they detonated near the Queen ship, entire sections of the massive vessel were stretched and twisted beyond recognition, pulled into gravitational fields that should not have been possible. The bioship tried to adapt to this new threat, but there was no defense against the fundamental forces of the universe. Sections of its hull were torn away and crushed into impossibly dense matter. The creature's screams could be heard across all communication frequencies as it experienced pain beyond imagination. But even this was not enough. The Queen ship was too large, too resilient. It continued to fight back, launching waves of smaller bioships and firing spore weapons that could consume any normal matter they touched. "Admiral," reported General Rodriguez, "the target is still functional. Estimated time to complete destruction using current weapons, 14 hours. "We don't have 14 hours, Admiral Chen replied, checking her tactical displays. "Long-range sensors are detecting Krexthal reinforcements moving toward this system. If they arrive before we finish this, we'll be outnumbered 1,000 to 1. She paused, then made the decision that would end the war and define humanity's place in the galaxy forever. "Prepare the entropy cannon." The bridge fell silent. The entropy cannon was humanity's ultimate weapon, a device so dangerous that it had never been tested on anything larger than an asteroid. It worked by accelerating time itself around its target, causing rapid aging until the target simply decayed into cosmic dust. "Admiral," Dr. Vasquez said quietly, "the theoretical calculations suggest that weapon could have effects beyond the immediate target. We don't know what will happen if we use it on something as large as the Queen ship." "Then today we find out," Admiral Chen replied. "Fire the weapon." The entropy cannon charged for several minutes, drawing power from the entire fleet. When it fired, the beam that struck the Queen ship was invisible to the human eye, but its effects were immediately apparent. The massive biovessel began to age rapidly, its organic hull wrinkling and cracking as millions of years passed in mere seconds. The Queen ship tried desperately to adapt, to find some way to defend against the acceleration of time itself. But adaptation required time, and time was exactly what the weapon was stealing from it. Within minutes, the largest living creature in the galaxy had aged into ancient decay. The final death scream of the Krexthul Queen could be heard across every communication frequency in the system. It was the sound of an entire species facing extinction, the collective voice of billions of minds realizing that their long reign of terror was finally over. When the weapon finished its work, nothing remained but a cloud of ancient dust where the Queen ship had been. The Krexthul as a species had ceased to exist. The human fleet hung motionless in space, surrounded by the debris of their enemies. They had won the ultimate victory, but the cost was higher than anyone had imagined. The weapons they had used to achieve this victory had changed them in ways they were only beginning to understand. Ambassador Zethkar's ship approached the Retribution 3 hours after the battle ended. The crystal being requested permission to come aboard, and Admiral Chen agreed to meet with her in the ship's conference room. "We are grateful," Zethkar said carefully as she entered the room. Her crystal body, which had been gray with stress when the war began, was now even darker. "The galaxy is saved. The Krexthul threat is ended forever. But we must ask, was such complete destruction necessary?" Admiral Chen looked out through the viewport at the debris field that had once been a species. "You came to us because your civilized methods failed. You asked us to save the galaxy from extinction. This is what total war looks like. This is what we do when extinction is the alternative. And now?" Zethkar asked, though she was not sure she wanted to hear the answer. "Now you remember why you were afraid of us in the first place," Admiral Chen replied simply. "The galaxy is safe. The Krexthul are extinct. Mission accomplished." The alien ambassador looked uncomfortable, shifting her crystalline form in a way that indicated extreme distress. "What happens next? Will you use these weapons again?" Admiral Chen considered the question carefully. "We will use whatever weapons are necessary to protect ourselves and our allies. The galaxy now knows what happens when someone threatens all sentient life. Hopefully that knowledge will prevent anyone else from making the same mistake." As the human fleets began their journey home, the various species of the Galactic Council were left to contemplate what they had witnessed. They had been saved from extinction, but their saviors had proven to be more terrifying than the threat they had eliminated. The formal ceremonies recognizing humanity's new status in galactic society would come later. The technology transfers and political agreements would be negotiated over months and years. But the real change had already occurred. Every species in the galaxy now understood exactly why humanity had been kept at arm's length for so long. Some saviors, they had learned, were more frightening than the enemies they destroyed. Years later, when new threats emerged in distant sectors of the galaxy, a message would spread across the cosmos through whispered communications and coded transmissions. "Call the humans. But remember, when you ask them for total war, that's exactly what you'll get." The Krexthul were gone, consumed by the same forces of extinction they had wielded against so many others. But the galaxy would never forget the price of salvation, or the terrible efficiency of the species that had delivered it. Admiral Chen stood alone on the observation deck of the Retribution as Earth grew larger in the viewport. Behind them lay a trail of dead worlds and extinct enemies. Ahead lay a future where humanity would never again be considered a minor player in galactic affairs.